The information presented in this podcast is general. It is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. It should be never used to diagnose, prescribe medical or psychological conditions, or replace a physician. And it is not intended to prevent, treat, or cure such conditions or substitute for mental care, preventive health care, counseling, or therapy from or a physical or mental health professional. Thank you for listening and blessings. Have you ever wished to discover how to help your employees with their occupational stress in a mindful approach? What if there is a way to building a productive and supportive environment for your employees that leads you to influence the organizational culture positively? Well, this is your invitation to join us to Mindful Leader Talk, a podcast on the effects of mindfulness as a secular practice on occupational stress and organizational culture.
All right, so we're diving deep today into something that I think we all kind of know is important, but maybe don't always give it the attention it deserves.
I know what you mean.
And that is mindful communication, specifically in the workplace.
Right. Yeah.
And we've got some really interesting research and perspectives here that suggest that just being present and aware in our interactions at work can really make a huge difference, not just in how we feel, but, actual outcomes.
It's not just like, some fluffy self-help concept. It's actually,
Right.
yeah, it really has some teeth to it. And the material we looked at really lays out, what mindful communication actually means in practice.
So what are we talking about here when we say mindful communication?
Well, based on what we've seen, it boils down to a few key things.
Okay.
First off, being truly present in the moment when you're interacting with someone, like actually engaged and not, half checking your phone or planning your next email.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that.
Oh, we all are, right?
Yeah.
And then there's listening with real intention.
So not just, waiting for your turn to talk.
Exactly. It's about genuinely hearing what the other person is saying and trying to understand their perspective. And then, of course, there's speaking with clarity. So, making sure you're expressing yourself in a way that others can easily understand.
Which is harder than it sounds sometimes.
You're telling me, and finally, it's about approaching all your interactions with empathy, like really trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes and understand where they're coming from.
Okay, so I can see how all of those things individually would be beneficial. But what does the research say about the overall impact of mindful communication in the workplace?
Well, the findings are pretty compelling. It's linked to all sorts of positive outcomes like better teamwork, reduced misunderstandings, and a more positive work environment overall.
Right, because if people feel heard and understood and respected, it's going to create a more harmonious atmosphere.
Exactly. And that can lead to increased productivity, creativity, and even job satisfaction.
So this isn't just about, feeling good. It's about actually performing better as individuals and as teams.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really struck me in the material we looked at is how mindful communication can actually help to prevent and resolve conflict.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about avoiding awkward silences. It can actually help us navigate those tricky situations.
Precisely because when we're communicating mindfully, we're more likely to identify and address issues early on before they escalate into bigger problems.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from what we've read is that mindful communication isn't just some innate talent that some people have and others don't.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a skill that can be learned and developed with practice.
Exactly. Like any skill, the more you practice it, the better you get at it.
Right. So let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, I'm sold. I want to become a more mindful communicator. Where do they start?
Well, the research highlights a few key steps that anyone can take to start incorporating mindful communication into their daily work life.
Okay, what are those?
Well, one of the most important is active listening, which we touched on earlier.
Right, so it's more than just hearing the words someone is saying.
Exactly. It's about really focusing on the speaker, paying attention to their body language, their tone of voice, and really trying to understand the message they're trying to convey.
And putting aside your own thoughts and reactions for a moment?
Exactly. You're not planning your response. You're just fully present in that moment, absorbing what the other person is saying.
So you're really tuning into that specific frequency as opposed to all the other noise going on in your head.
That's a great way to put it. And another key step that's often overlooked is the power of the pause.
The pause.
Yeah. Before you respond to someone, take a moment to pause and just collect your thoughts.
Okay.
It might feel a little awkward at first, especially in our fast-paced work environments where everyone's always rushing to the next thing.
Sure. But why is that pause so important?
Well, it gives you a chance to process what you've just heard and to formulate a more thoughtful and measured response.
Instead of just reacting impulsively.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with your words and ensuring that what you say is aligned with what you actually mean.
So it's like creating a little buffer zone between stimulus and response, which can be especially helpful when things are getting heated or when you're dealing with a sensitive topic.
Right. It allows you to choose your words more carefully and to avoid saying something that you might regret later.
And speaking of choosing your words carefully, another important aspect of mindful communication is clarity and conciseness.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about getting your message across in a way that's clear, easy to understand, and free of jargon or unnecessary complexity.
Think about it. We've all been in those meetings where someone's rambling on and you have no idea what they're actually trying to say.
Oh, yeah. Done that, got the T-shirt.
Right. So by being clear and concise, you can save everyone time and frustration and ensure that your message is actually received and understood.
And this might seem obvious, but it's really important to tailor your communication style to the specific person and situation.
Oh, absolutely. One size does not fit all when it comes to communication.
Right. So what works for one person or one situation might not work for another.
Exactly. So you need to be adaptable and adjust your approach accordingly.
And then there's the whole nonverbal aspect of communication, which I think we often overlook.
Oh, that's huge.
It's not just about the words we say. It's about our body language, our tone of voice, our facial expressions. All of that sends a message.
And sometimes those nonverbal cues can even contradict what we're saying verbally.
Right. So like if someone's saying all the right things, but their body language is screaming, I don't want to be here.
Exactly. It's like when someone's telling you they're fine, but they're clearly not.
Yeah, we've all been there.
So being mindful of our own nonverbal communication is just as important as being mindful of what others are conveying through their nonverbals.
So it sounds like mindful communication is really a holistic approach. It's about being present, aware, and intentional in all aspects of our interactions.
Exactly. It's about bringing that same level of awareness and attention to our communication that we would bring to any other important task or skill.
And the research shows that it really does pay off.
Absolutely. It can lead to stronger relationships, improved collaboration, increased productivity, and a more positive and fulfilling work experience overall.
So it's not just about being a better communicator. It's about being a better colleague, a better leader, a better human being.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes it so powerful.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to leave our listeners with a little challenge.
Okay.
As you go about your workday today, I want you to pick just one interaction that you're going to have and consciously try to apply one of the principles of mindful communication that we discussed.
I love that.
Maybe it's really focusing on active listening during a meeting or pausing for a moment before responding to an email.
Or paying attention to your nonverbal cues during a presentation.
Exactly. Just choose one thing and see what happens.
Notice how it feels. Notice how the other person responds and see if you can start to make mindful communication a more consistent part of your daily interactions.
And who knows, maybe it'll spark a ripple effect and create a more mindful and harmonious workplace for everyone.
I think that would be amazing.
Me too. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive into mindful communication.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, we'll catch you next time for another insightful exploration.
See you then. Bye.
If you have any questions, concerns, or comment, please visit my website www.embiasconsulting.com or send me an email to maria@embiasconsulting.com. This is the Mindful Leader Talk, a podcast on the effects of mindfulness as a secular practice on occupational stress and organizational culture. Feel free to invite, to listen, or share this podcast. Stay in tune for all coming episodes to building profitable organizations driven by the well-being of their employees and, therefore, our society. In the meantime, please stay safe. Blessings.